5 years ago, our quiet neighborhood was shaken when our next-door neighbors, the Wilsons, reported their teenage son missing. Caleb was just 14 when he vanished without a trace. His father, Greg, had come over to inform us personally. My wife and I were devastated for them. The news was everywhere: TV, flyers, police at their house almost daily. It was the kind of tragedy you think only happens in movies. As time went on, and the story faded from the news, we assumed the worst had happened. Greg and his wife, Anna, never talked about it again, and we never had the heart to ask whether Caleb's body had ever turned up. It felt too cruel to even speak it out loud. Every now and then they'd invite us over for a summer barbecue, trying to pretend that things were normal, but nothing was. Anna barely spoke anymore. She was distant, ghost-like. Greg, once a friendly neighbor, had become anxious and jittery, like he was always waiting for something terrible to happen. Fast forward to just last week. Something happened that has left me disturbed to my core. It was a regular evening. I was taking out the trash when Greg approached me and asked if he could borrow a shovel. No explanation, just a flat, tired voice. I didn't think twice about it. I grabbed my best shovel from the shed and handed it over. He thanked me and walked back into his backyard. Later that evening, I happened to glance out of our upstairs window that overlooked Greg's yard. That's when I saw him. He was digging. Not a small hole either. It was wide, deep, deliberate. He was struggling, his body trembling with the effort. He's not young anymore, I thought. Out of instinct, I grabbed my second shovel and headed over to help. The moment I entered his yard and called his name, everything changed. No, I got it. Greg froze, then dropped the shovel and came rushing toward me, panic in his eyes. No, I got it, he insisted, practically shoving me back. I told him it was no big deal, but he pointed at the gate like I was a dog and said, "I will not allow you to use that shovel in my backyard." I was stunned. He wasn't angry, he was scared. And that fear passed into me like static. Without another word, I left and went back inside. But I couldn't shake the feeling. I went back upstairs and watched from the window again. He was digging for at least another 30 minutes. Then he stopped and started glancing around, scanning the windows, the roofs, like he knew he was being watched. Before I could duck away, he looked up and locked eyes with me. I stepped away, pretending I wasn't doing anything suspicious, but I knew he saw me. The next few hours were tense. I kept checking the backyard, but he didn't return to the hole. I figured he was waiting for the cover of darkness. I was right. At exactly 1:30 a.m., the sound of metal hitting dirt jolted me awake. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake my wife, and crept downstairs. From the window, it was too dark to see anything clearly, so I slipped outside in my robe and made my way to the fence, heart pounding. Peeking over the edge, I saw him, digging again. The moonlight caught the sweat on his face. After a few minutes, he disappeared inside. This was my only chance. I climbed over the fence and stepped quietly into his yard. The hole was massive now, and something was at the bottom. It was a garbage bag, torn slightly at the edge, black, thick, and from that rip something pale poked out. My gut twisted. I looked at the bag, then the door, then the bag again. My brain was at war with itself. Look inside, don't look inside, get out now. I ran. Seconds after I climbed back into my yard, Greg returned outside. He didn't dig. He just stood there, watching, breathing, thinking. By morning, the hole was gone, completely filled in, like nothing had ever happened. But his SUV, which he always kept in his driveway, was now parked on the street. I don't know what he did during the rest of that night, and I don't think I want to know. But I'm convinced whatever was buried in that hole wasn't garbage. Maybe it was his son. Maybe it always had been. He hasn't returned my shovel. I'm not going to ask for it. He's been avoiding me, won't even look my way. And yesterday something happened that has me sleeping with one eye open. I looked out my window, just casually, and caught Greg standing in his own window, staring into mine. Middle of the day. He didn't flinch when I saw him. He just reached up, closed his blinds, and vanished. Now I don't know if he's watching me all the time. I don't know what he thinks I saw. I haven't told anyone, not my wife, not the police, no one. But I feel like something terrible has already happened. And worse, I feel like something worse is coming. I've lived in 3 different houses in my life, 2 with my family and the one I live in now, alone. This happened at our first house in the last few months before we moved out. I was 15 at the time. Our family was never close to the neighbors, not out of hostility, just distance, especially with the people next door. There were 2 boys around my age who lived there with their dad. We only spoke to them once or twice in our entire lives, which sounds impossible considering how close we lived. Still, we knew their names, Nate and Dylan. One day, me and my little brother, who was 10 then, were shooting hoops in the driveway. That's when Nate walked over from next door and started a conversation. It caught us both off guard. He wasn't exactly friendly, but not hostile either. He asked if it was true that we were moving soon. I answered most of his questions. My brother wasn't much of a talker with strangers. Nate was probably the same age as me, maybe a year older, but he had this intensity about him that didn't match his age. By the end of the conversation, he invited us to come shoot BB guns by the river in the woods down the street the next day. I said sure. It was the weekend and I figured why not? My little brother asked if he could come too. Nate barely looked at him and just said, "Yeah," before walking away. The next evening, just before sunset, Nate and Dylan rang our doorbell. We rushed to answer. Our parents didn't know about the BB guns. They were both dressed in camo gear, like they were heading to war. One of them carried a heavy duffel bag. My brother and I exchanged looks, trying not to laugh at how serious they were acting. But as we walked, the silence started to feel heavier. They barely spoke. When we got to the woods, Nate dropped the duffel and unzipped it. Dylan wandered over to a tree, snapped off a thick branch and hurled it into the river like it had insulted him. Me and my brother stopped smiling. Nate pulled out 2 guns and handed them to us. That's when he said it, calmly, like it was nothing. "They're real." I froze. Dylan grabbed a loaded pistol from the bag and started firing across the river. The crack of each shot echoed through the woods. It wasn't a joke. I snatched the gun from my brother's hands and shoved both weapons back in the bag. "We're leaving," I said. "This isn't cool." Dylan stopped firing. They just stared at us, blank and cold. As we turned to walk away, one of them shouted a curse behind us. I didn't look back. That night, we told our parents they were weird kids. That was it. We didn't say a word about the guns. I woke up hours later to a cold breeze on my face. My window was wide open and, I wasn't alone. I felt something cold and solid press against the back of my head. Then came the whisper, "Shh, shh." I didn't move. I didn't scream. My body locked up, but my mind raced, fully aware of what was happening. It was Nate. I recognized his voice instantly. "If you tell anyone, especially my dad, I'll come back. I'll kill you. And your family." I whispered one word, "Okay." He nudged the gun against my head, then disappeared out the window like a shadow. After that night, it only got worse. Almost every night until we moved, I would catch either Nate or Dylan standing at their bedroom window, staring into mine, or my brother's, just watching. One night, about a week before we moved, a rock hit my window at 1 a.m. I opened it, stupidly, and saw Nate in the yard, aiming a pistol straight up at me. I dropped to the floor, heart slamming in my chest, convinced that was it. But instead of a gunshot, laughter. Both of them were laughing. Then I heard one of them mutter, "F** in idiot." There were 2 more incidents that week. More threats, more sick games. When we finally moved, it felt like escaping a nightmare. Neither me nor my brother ever told anyone the full story. We never found out what happened to Nate or Dylan, but I'll never forget that whisper, the weight of the gun, or the eyes watching from the window. At the time I'm telling you this, it happened just 2 weeks ago. I'm fresh out of college, finally living on my own. But you know, freedom has its cost. The only place I could afford a house was in a rundown neighborhood that always feels like it's falling apart. I don't get along with my neighbors. On one side, loud music blasts almost every night, sometimes until morning. On the other side, things are worse. Creepy. There's an older woman in her 60s, never friendly, always looking like she's halfway here, halfway somewhere else. Living with her is another woman, younger but with clear signs of severe mental disability. I've never figured out their relationship. Mother and daughter, caretaker and patient. Who knows? All I know is something feels wrong over there, wrong over. I'd sit on my porch sometimes just trying to wind down, and I'd catch disturbing scenes next door. The younger woman would have these violent outbursts, arms crossed tightly, rocking hard back and forth, screaming, making guttural noises like she was being tortured. The older woman would just stand behind her, holding her back like this was routine. More than once, the younger one would stop and point at me, mumbling incoherent words while staring right into my eyes. I'd go back inside when that happened. I had to. There was something in her eyes that made my skin crawl. One night, just like any other, I had to sleep early for work. But the noise coming from their house was worse than usual. Not just loud, frantic. The younger woman was shrieking like she was being killed, and I could hear the older woman yelling in a panic. It didn't stop. For over an hour. I couldn't take it anymore. I stormed over there and banged on their door, my heart racing with frustration. The old woman flung it open, glaring. "What the hell do you want?" I asked, politely, I swear, to please keep the noise down. She narrowed her eyes and tilted her head forward, like I had just insulted her existence. That's when the younger woman stormed into view, eyes wild, screaming, "How dare you!" The older woman yanked her back, and just like that, slam, the door shut in my face. I stood there for a second, completely thrown off, then walked home defeated. But at least it was quiet now. For once, I could finally sleep. Or so I thought. I woke up with that strange feeling that the night had gone by way too fast. I glanced at my clock. 3 o'clock in the morning. Still dark. I exhaled and dropped back into my pillow, but then I heard it. A noise downstairs. It was faint. A soft shuffle. Maybe nothing. I got up and went to my bedroom door, listening. Silence. I convinced myself it was nothing and went back to bed. But then, not even 20 minutes later, I woke up again. This time I had no idea why. I just felt something was wrong. And then I heard it again. This time it was closer. Heart pounding, I reached for my phone, just for the screen light. I didn't want to turn on anything too bright. That's when I saw it. Something was at the edge of my bed. A black circular shadow pressed against the wooden frame. I lifted my phone slowly, and the light revealed it. Her face, the younger woman, the one from next door. She was crouched right at the foot of my bed, eyes wide and trembling, her face twisted in some feral rage. The second the light touched her, she screamed, like something inhuman, like the light was burning her. I screamed too. I leapt from my bed, stumbling hard on the floor, and when I looked back, she was crawling toward me, fast, like a spider. I slammed the door behind me and bolted down the stairs. I didn't stop. I didn't even look back. I just grabbed my phone and called the cops while she pounded on my bedroom door above, howling words I couldn't even understand. When the cops arrived, I told them everything. That she lived next door. That she was unstable. Dangerous. The older woman showed up too, trying to convince them to let her go. But they insisted on taking the younger one in, just for the night. And as he asked that, the old woman looked at me. Really looked at me. Her face changed into something I can't unsee. A slow, hateful scowl spread across her face, her eyes gleaming with pure venom. That stare told me everything. If I pressed charges, something bad was going to happen. I said no, but her face didn't change. They took the younger woman away. The older one walked back home, her eyes never leaving mine. 5 minutes later, I saw her get in her car and drive off into the dark. They still live next door. I don't feel safe in my own house anymore. I sleep with the lights on, and every creak or bump I hear at night makes my chest tighten. I know it's only a matter of time before something happens again. I'm seriously considering moving, because now I know the truth. She's not just disturbed, she's dangerous, and the worst part, she knows exactly where I sleep.